Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
So, hello everybody. Can you hear me? Yeah, I think you can. I'm famous in Europe for rickrolling 2,500 people from the WordPress community during WordCamp Europe. Sorry for the cheesy picture, but what it was really about is the push notifications you see here in the bottom. And ultimately, there's only one thing in life that creates tension, and it's wanting things to be different than they are. And there are quite some things I want to change, but the good news is I'm among the best people in the world to make this change together, the people in the WordPress community. Firstly, let's have a look at 30 years of internet. What did it bring us? With Google, we find information. With Facebook and LinkedIn, we organize the people around us. Airbnb, booking for housing. Uber for transport. Everything is perfectly packaged. And yeah, user-friendly. Can we have a round of applause for the internet? But at the same time, the internet has deep-rooted issues. Tech giants like Uber are misusing, in a way, their monopolies, exploiting its drivers. And social media, it's designed to use its users. Just look at the business model. It's our data, our content, our attention. These are all incredibly valuable things, but right now, it's the companies and not the users that reap the rewards. In 2018 alone, Facebook sold our attention to advertisers for a mind-blowing $55 billion. In content, we suffer censorship, plagiarism, revisionism, and fake news. And today's question really is how to take back control. Firstly, we look at what open source communities are capable of. Spoiler alert, we at the WordPress community who already think, act, and work open source, we will have great competitive advantage the coming years. And secondly, I'll share what we work on at WordProof.io. I'm very excited to be here. Miami, are you ready? Here we go. To kick things off, 3 things we as a community are capable of. Number 1, the democratization of publishing. Is that what we see here? No. Oh, the democratization of publishing. Remember this, it's our mission statement at WordPress. And the best way to explain it is to describe the opposite, and that's censorship. Being a content creator became a job nowadays. For example, on YouTube. If you have millions of views or a special niche, you could make a business out of it. And every minute, over 300 minutes of video are uploaded to YouTube. And moderation actually became hard for them. Advertisers don't like their ads next to specific types of content, and they report it. YouTube yearly generates billions in ad revenue, and to avoid advertisers from running away, YouTube actually shuts down channels. And overnight, content creators, they lose their channel, their bread and butter, and this happens on a daily basis. So actually, as a content creator, I have to trust YouTube in not shutting down my account. And also for me, I have to trust Facebook in not deleting my social accounts. What happens if Mark Zuckerberg sells his shares to maybe Iraq? Am I still welcome there? Can I still connect with the people around me? And on the other side, we have to trust Google in not reading or selling our email. But of course we trust Google, right? Because they said, don't be evil for years. What is the solution to censorship? Is there a platform that's hardly censorable? Any suggestions? It's WordPress, of course. It's open source, it's decentralized, and it's a textbook example of how a community is a market leader. Ain't that cool? And here, it's a quote from the founder of Drupal. He said, open source is the only way to build a pro-privacy and anti-monopoly independent web. If you would describe WordPress ecosystem, it would look something like this. You have value creators on the one side, on the left, and value extractors, the users, on the right. And they're brought together by open source code. And we all have the benefits and reasons for using and contributing. In fact, that's why we're all here. It's a well-functioning ecosystem. It's a flywheel. And we've built an inclusive market leader together. The best technology is really available to anyone. Open source code plus a community was able to democratize publishing. And with an ever-growing market share of 35%, you can say, mission accomplished. But you can also say at the same time, what a pity for the galaxy that we just focus on publishing and e-commerce, right? Can we push open source, our open source values further than just publishing, taking back control beyond publishing? Let's see. Step number 2 is the democratization of finance. There are some problems with finance, hyperinflation being one of them. Let's have a look at one of my favorite open source experiments, and it's Bitcoin. With Bitcoin, you can transfer value from one person to another in a 100% open source manner. And in the United States, Bitcoin is not too popular. And actually, that's a good thing. It's not really a solution to a problem you have here, which indicates that there's a stable currency, and that's the dollar. Oh, and here's an article from the New York Times, and it's about how Bitcoin saved families in Venezuela. What's the inflation rate in the US? It's around 2% on a yearly basis. Does anyone know what the inflation rate was in 2018 in Venezuela? Yeah? It was 3.5%, and not on a yearly basis, but exactly on a daily basis. So $1,000 today is $800 at the end of the week, $300 at the end of the month, and equals almost zero at the end of the year. So keeping money in the local currency is kind of financial suicide, right? While holding dollars there is illegal. Or it was, at least. And Bitcoin is kind of their safe escape. Now, nowhere in the world is the amount of local business Bitcoin transactions as high as in Venezuela, making Bitcoin arguably the fastest growing bank in the world. And in Venezuela, we see how open source technology, Bitcoin, and a community, its users, were able to democratize finance. So with blockchain, Bitcoin is a blockchain application. You can transfer value from one person to another, and at the same time, that value is programmable. Does that sound like building blocks for an open source future? I think it does. Let's see if we can push it further than just finance. This is where it starts to get exciting. Hello? So step number 3, democratize everything else. Let's have a look at the technology companies who dominate the Fortune 500 today. These all kind of look the same. You have value creators and value extractors. So in the case of Uber, you have drivers on the left and you have riders on the right. And they transfer via this centralized entity. And shareholders on the top, they extract currently 30% of all the value in the ecosystem. The problem is that you have kind of a misaligned interest between all participants. The users and the beneficiaries are not the same people. And in fact, profit is the only thing that bridges them together. Nobody really cares about the health of the platform. Riders, they just want to get from point A to point B. The drivers, they just want to get paid. And the shareholders are just looking at profit and growth. They don't really care about the users. So in 2014, Daniel Larimer, he realized this idea of a decentralized, autonomous community. It's an open source organization running on a blockchain. And many in the blockchain space believe that these open source organizations will compete and ultimately replace Facebook and Uber and companies like that. And if you take Uber, you still have the drivers and the riders, but the central entity is completely replaced with open source code. All participants, they form a community together. And now anyone could contribute to how that company operates. And through a token, every user, the riders and the drivers, it's kind of everyone is a shareholder. And this completely aligns the interest of all participants. And there you have it. It's transparent, auditable, trustworthy, and anyone can check everything, like with WordPress. And it's 100% inclusive, meaning everyone can contribute. And it's really, literally turns the entire world into a potential workforce. How can any company compete with an open source organization with millions of people collaborating? That is actually the same question as how would you compete with a content management system with millions of websites and tens of thousands of developers and contributors like WordPress? The answer is simple. You simply can't compete with well-aligned communities. We, as WordPress, prove how powerful community and code are, really. With blockchain added to the mix, we have the opportunity to redesign everything. Community will rebuild social media, where Facebook won't extract 55 billion a year, where all value will stay into the communities. And communities will rebuild ride sharing, where shareholders won't extract 30%, while the consumers will pay less while drivers will earn more. In this decade, we will bring our community ideals beyond everything, beyond publishing, beyond finance. Does that make sense? Yeah. I think so. Now let's talk content and WordProof a bit. Blockchain will become part of best practices, and in 5 years from now, if you don't timestamp your content, you'll be considered a fraud. What are you hiding? If you don't put your content on chain, you'll be seen as a revisionist. Timestamping content is exactly what we do, and working with an open source content management system brings a lot of transparency already, but today, readers and buyers will still need massive amounts of trust in site owners in not being evil. To really fight fake news, revisionism, plagiarism, fraud, and disputes in e-commerce, what you really need is being able to prove that you didn't tamper with the database. And timestamping content with blockchain is the missing puzzle for a trustworthy internet. So here's a short video on how it works.
Think for a second about your visitor, wandering through the internet, making his way through millions of websites. The choice is literally endless. However, there's only a few websites he accepts information from, let alone does business with. He trusts those websites. But how do you gain your visitors' trust? By timestamping your content on the blockchain. The idea is simple. You publish your content and add a timestamp to the blockchain, creating indisputable proof that you own the content. You gain additional trust by being transparent. Your visitors can go through your content's different timestamps and now know for sure you didn't tamper with your content. Let's look at the setup. Some say blockchain is difficult, but we've broken it down with a 3-step setup wizard. Follow the 3 steps and you will be able to timestamp right from your WordPress dashboard. The entire setup takes just 5 minutes. Start timestamping today. WordProof timestamp. WordProof.io.
Does it make sense? And here you see it. It's on Dutch television, a fragment. Under a post, there's a link. You click on it, you see a blockchain certificate, and you can really see, compare the revisions, for example. How did the content change over time? It's really in Git style. What is away, what is there? So this is what it looks like. And in a few years, consumers will be suspicious if you don't timestamp your content, right? Since our launch at WordCamp Europe last June, almost 200,000 pieces of content have been timestamped and more than 40 million page views with certificates are served. Our vision is really an open source ecosystem with, on the one hand, content management systems, and on the other hand, we will lead standardization. In schema.org, we work with ISO to make sure that search engines and social media can verify the integrity of any form of content, and later might even do ranking based on timestamps, right? Once search engines will recognize this open way of showing your integrity, it really makes sense that you were among the first ones who timestamped it. See it as buying a domain name 10 years ago with a really nice name. As the ability to prove integrity ought to be a human right, in my opinion, there's a free plan for the visitors of WordCamp Miami. If you sign up for the free plan in 72 hours from now at /Miami, you will get the most extended plan for 6 months, as we'd love to collect as much user feedback as possible. So if you stop with any free plan, all stamps will of course be valid forever without relying on WordProof, as it's fully decentralized, as it should be. So my advice, stamp at least the terms and conditions, the most popular content, and I'd love to invite you all. Let's get this timestamping movement in motion. And whether you're a publisher, a web shop, a photographer, an agency, a developer, with timestamping we can bring integrity to the world of content and commerce. And in the bigger picture, we as WordPress community, our superpowers and values have the potential to improve the full galaxy. So through WordPress and blockchain timestamps, we can shift the web from don't be evil to a place where we can say you can't be evil. So my question to you is, let's fix the broken web together. Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastiaan.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Again,